My name is Hilary Russell, and I am the manager of the 3 Fraser Valley Regional Libraries in Abbotsford. That's the Clearbrook Library here, the Abbotsford Community Library, and the teeny tiny Mount Lehman Library, which is down Mount Lehman Road. It's literally 491 square feet. We are part of the FVRL system, which has 25 community libraries, all the way up and down the valley from Boston Bar to Delta. Clearbrook Library was delighted to have been asked by CBC Canada Reads program to collaborate on tonight's event featuring local author Loghan Paylor, the defender Tegan Quin, and CBC moderator Beneath Bridge. We hope you all have a wonderful evening. A couple of health and safety notes. There are 4 exit doors to the south of this room. If you hear fire alarms or need a quick exit, please head out via these doors or the doors in the lobby. The library is closing at 8 p.m., but the lobby and washrooms just outside this room will be open throughout tonight's event. Please feel free to talk to library staff, or I suspect the CBC staff as well, if you have any questions or concerns. We would like to begin by acknowledging the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Coast Salish peoples, specifically the shared traditional territory of the Lekamel, Matsqui, and Sumas First Nations. I'll turn it over to Beneath Bridge. Again, thank you all for coming.
This is Canada Reads in Abbotsford, and how exciting is that? You know, this is extra special because we have launched a bureau in Abbotsford. The CBC has an office on South Fraser Way. Myself and Kira Junos, who's in the back there, my colleague, are out here covering stories in the Fraser Valley, showing that representations because the Fraser Valley really matters. And you know, today some of you are probably having a very big fan moment. Others are probably just here to find a good read, have a good conversation, sip some tea. You know what? Everyone's welcome. So thank you so much for being here today. I want to get started with the program now. Let's do this. So I'm going to start by introducing our guests here. So first we have Loghan Paylor, who is the author of The Cure for Drowning. Tegan is a queer trans author who lives in the Fraser Valley, and you know, you've written a lot of short fiction, you've written essays, but this is their debut novel, and we're here at Canada Reads. I mean, look at that. You also co-own a gaming company as well, and that is Bookworm Games. Is that in Chilliwack?
Yes,
Yes. And then Loghan also teaches writing at SFU and UBC as well. So Loghan, we have questions. I'm so excited. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you.
And of course, we have Tegan Quin with us. So Tegan is the defender, the champion of this book. Your whole goal here is to, you know, let it come out on top here to defend and champion this book. Tegan is, of course, one half of indie pop Canadian group with her sister Sarah, and you are also an author yourself. So, as I understand, you've written an autobiography, you've done 2 graphic novels with Sarah as well, and we are so glad that you could join us tonight in Abbotsford. So, thank you so much for being here. And I know that in our audience, if you have questions tonight, we do have a place where you can submit them just in the back there. There's a slip, you can write your question, and then we're going to try and get to it towards the end. And if also Kier will be around, he's right in the back, but you can say, hey Kier, I got a question, and we'll figure the rest out from there. So please, we welcome your questions, your curiosity. This is going to be a fun conversation. So let's dive in. So Loghan, I want to just start for the folks who may have not read the book. Let's just start with understanding a bit. 30 seconds, if you can. 30 seconds. Can you just give us the Coles notes on this book?
Sure, yeah. So The Cure for Drowning is a Canadian historical fiction novel with fantasy elements. It's a family story, it's a love story, it's a war story. And it centers around two characters. So the first is Kit McNair, who grows up in a farming family in Ontario in the 1930s, and who doesn't really feel like they belong in their community. And then when a new family moves to town, it includes a young woman named Rebecca. And Kit and Rebecca meet, and they have an almost instantaneous spark. But things get complicated very quickly with the rest of Kit's family and the looming Second World War, and things kind of take off from there.
So after reading this book, you will notice there's a blend of different themes. So for example, there's historical fiction, there is romance, there is mythology. It's a very much a mix. So tell me a little bit about that, and how would you describe it?
I think I went through several pitches and discussions with the marketing department about like how on earth are we going to put this book on shelves? What category do we put it in? So I think the story itself was grounded in a lot of historical research. So I did my best to stick very close to real Canadian history and base it in, a fictional town in like a real place in Ontario. And then to bring in mythological and fantasy elements to help tell the kind of story that I wanted to tell. So the places where the history narrative kind of ran out is where I saw opportunities to bring in more fantastical elements.
And sometimes you just don't need to fit the mold, right? You create your own, you do your own thing, and people admire that too. So that's incredible. The other thing I think I took away from this book is that it's pretty timeless in a way. Like it's set in the Second World War, but it can also be set in any other part of history or place, really. Like it's dynamic in that sense. So why did you choose the Second World War? Was there a connection to it? Does it just fascinate you? I don't know. What's the reason?
There's kind of two reasons. So the first one is one of the original inspirations for this novel was a book of poetry that I inherited from an ancestor of mine. Mm-hmm. And he had served in the Royal Canadian Air Force during the Second World War. He was stationed in the UK. And he miraculously survived the war and then came back to Canada and wrote a book of poetry about his experiences. And he included plenty of photographs and anecdotes from his time in the Air Service. And so when I read this book, I found it really touched me in like such a deep way. And I became only slightly obsessed with kind of figuring out what his life must have been like on the airbase and kind of what more the kind of behind the scenes and day-to-day life would have been like. So that was already on my mind. And then when I was looking for kind of a good time in Canadian history to set this novel, the Second World War really presented an opportunity for a lot of Canadians, especially from the poor and working class backgrounds, to travel farther than they would have otherwise in their lifetimes. And so as a result, you had all of these groups of people who were meeting and forming friendships and falling in love and all that fun stuff, who in another time and place would just never have crossed paths. And so it was a wonderful opportunity to kind of bring in a really diverse and exciting cast of characters and sort of logically make sure they had a place to meet.
And I think part of that community is the queer community and their experiences as well. So we don't typically hear or read about that, especially wartime stories. Why was that so important for you to show in this book?
I think there were a couple of reasons. Certainly, there's sort of this idea out there that being queer and being trans or gender non-conforming is a very contemporary idea, but that's not strictly true, and we have a long history showing our community in Canada and before Canada, stretching back thousands of years. And so I wanted a chance to explore and kind of dig into and show that aspect of history that maybe many readers hadn't been exposed to before. And I also wanted to show like members of my own community what our legacy looks like and what our forebears were doing and what their lives were like at the time.
And when it comes to writing a book, I think sometimes, perhaps in life, there are certain ingredients that you pick up and you might think, okay, one day I want to write about this, or one day I want to explore this more. I don't know, was there a particular part for you, moments in your life where you were like, I'm putting this in my jar and I'm going to go back to it one day and I want to know more about this or write about this,
I get the sense sometimes that my family thinks that I do that far more than I actually do.
I was just curious.
But there definitely are, certainly, like growing up in Ontario, I spent a lot of time out like in a rural area, wandering around the forest. It was the 90s, we were very unsupervised. So I had kind of all these experiences like on the land in Ontario, and those have really stuck with me. So when I was looking for a setting that I knew I could like really ground the story in, that came to mind. Yeah, and then also as a kid, I was really into mythology and fairy tales and so on. And there were a few specifically like Scots-Irish folk tales that I was really fascinated by, and so this was a great excuse to work that in as well.
Yeah, and you pick up on that really early in the book, so I know what you're saying. Tegan, I want to bring you into the conversation here. So overall, I want to know what made you want to participate in Canada Reads. It is a lot of work. You got to read a lot, which is, that's good. If you love to read, that's great. But you also have to debate. You have to make your case as to why this book deserves to win. So tell me a little bit about your why. Why'd you want to do this?
Oh, well, I didn't want to do it initially. I said no a couple times.
Whoa!
Because it is a lot of work, and I really thought that it deserved to be taken very seriously. We're very lucky to have this in Canada. I think this is the 25th year or something like that. And yeah, it's just such a unique thing. I mean, we're lucky to have CBC in general, but then to have a whole, such a huge period of time devoted to trying to get Canadians to read and highlighting Canadian authors. It's something I didn't take lightly, and so I didn't want to shove it into an already busy schedule. But also, as my therapist would say, that's just the surface reason. The undercurrent was that I am not that competitive. I'm terrified of hurting people's feelings. And Sarah, my sister, did it like 10 or 12 years ago, and it was her book that she chose got voted out in the first round because she chose a graphic novel, and she knew going into it. They told her, you'll get voted out in the first round. Like, the producers are really good at prepping you to know, like, I mean, it's a debate. You're going to go after the other books, you're going to get attacked, and they were like, at that point, graphic novels weren't taken that seriously. Obviously, Ducks won last year or the year before, because I think people do take them more seriously now, but and Sarah, like, some of the words she used to describe her experience were traumatizing, stressful.
Yeah, here she is.
Like, it took like over a decade for me to be like, I guess I'll do it.
Okay,
But I'm honored to do it, and I'm really excited. And when I read this book, I was like, I could defend this book.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I was also curious, because your sister did this in 2010, I believe. Did she give you any strategy, any tactics to be like, here, this is what you got to do?
No. Oh. I'm not entirely sure Sarah knows what I'm doing. Her and her wife just had their second kid. They're like busy. Okay. They've got a 3-teenager and a 12-week-old.
Okay. Well, Tegan's going to come up with her own strategy, so we'll see how
I'm on it, don't worry about it. I don't need Sarah.
Okay, but then tell me, what is it about The Cure for Drowning that made you want to champion this book?
So part of the process is the producers interview you about things you like to read, and then they send you books based on what you like.
Okay.
And The Cure for Drowning was in the first box of books that I got. I think the first box maybe had 8 books or 10 books, I'm not sure. I think I read The Cure for Drowning second, and I just compared every book that I read to it, and then a second box showed up, and I read those as well because I felt guilty. Like, even though I kind of knew this was the book, but in a way it was like I was doing my own internal Tegan reads and like debating all the different books, and I don't know, I just felt like this book, I could see a lot of different kinds of people reading this book. Different ages, different backgrounds, different parts of Canada, straight people, queer people. Like, I felt like this was just a classic. It felt very classic to me. It felt like a story that a lot of people could relate to, and I think because at the core for me it's about identity, and it doesn't matter how you identify, at some point you have to identify yourself, and so I think reading this book you get a really intimate and really beautiful like understanding of how all these characters identify and how they interface with each other, and that just felt like a very significant thing, and that made me think like, oh my god, people should, I had to like, oh god, people should read this book.
Well, with Canada Reads, there's always a theme. that they're exploring with these books. So for this one, it is the one to build bridges. That's the theme. So I wanted to ask you, I know you kind of mentioned already when it comes to identity, but how do you feel in other ways that this book is able to achieve that, to build bridges?
Well, I told Logan this, that I was joking and saying, like, I just learned this recently, but apparently Saskatoon has like 14 bridges, which I didn't know. And I was saying this is like the Saskatoon of books.
Wow. That's cool.
Obviously, I'm gonna win with that one.
That's her first argument.
Start strong.
Yeah.
I just feel like there's so many ways into this book, you know. It's a book that builds bridges, and that, like you already mentioned, I think it's a book that could be written now, you know, because of the way that the stories intersect, you know, like the characters are grappling with, like, what are they gonna do with their lives, and how does that interface with their families, and like who are they gonna love, and how's that gonna hurt their families or hurt themselves, and you know, and then of course there's a whole element about war and about judgment at home, or judgment in your chosen country, or a country that you now live in. And I feel like that's just speaks so much to the time that we're living in right now. So I haven't decided what the main bridge in is yet, but I think it's probably going to be identity, because Logan and I had a conversation about this a few weeks ago, that I just felt like they did such a good job at making me, like, I relate to the dads, and I relate to the, you know, the worst characters, and I relate to the dancer lady, and you know, I just was like vibing with all of them, you know.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to do with identity and belonging and family. One of the parts that I resonated along with was the siblings are a huge part of this book, right? They're dynamic. Sometimes they're punching each other and they're mad at each other. Other times they care, but they don't want to show that they truly care. And you know, you're off in the distance and thinking, what are they? What are they up to? So I want to talk a bit about the sibling dynamic here. So Logan, I want to go back to you here. Do you have siblings?
I do. I have 2 younger sisters.
And did your relationship with your sisters have anything to do with what's reflected in the book?
They think so?
Oh, they have opinions for sure. I should say as a disclaimer, none of the siblings in the book are based off of any real people, for sure. But certainly, yeah, like as you said, growing up in a family with siblings, I mean, yeah, you're kind of like in each other's hair for 18 years, and they become the people who know you the best and can push all of your buttons because they installed most of them. You know, they've been with you through so many significant moments in your life, and so they've been witness to, you know, the awkward preteen version of you, and they have all the embarrassing photos from when you were younger, and so it is a very unique relationship in that sense. Yeah, and certainly writing the siblings, being the eldest, I felt like writing Landon was a way to kind of like cathartically put the worst aspects of my like eldest sibling actions.
I think eldest siblings, we got it one way, you know, it's different sometimes, so we gotta go through sometimes. Is there, I mean, you know, not to say that every author has a character based upon them or who they are, but is there anybody here that you especially relate to in this book?
That's true. Patrick, please. I think honestly, I just have a lot of empathy for every character in this book because I spent so much time in their head and trying to see the world from their perspective. So I may be like the only Landon apologist in the world because I spent so much time trying to figure out like why he was doing the things he was doing. But yeah, in my heart, I love Patrick Please, I love Rat. I have a very soft spot for Hattie Dano because I think that she is low-key the coolest person in the book. And I feel like she has a whole other life of which Rebecca is only a sort of bizarre 10 months. Hey, I had this roommate one time, you'll never believe what happened. And she's gone off to have like her own career and adventures off screen.
I think there's a lot of unique Easter eggs in the book itself. You know, you'd be like, oh, well, that's different, that's unique, so that's interesting. Tegan, what about yourself? I mean, not to go back to your sister again, but is there any part?
You're obsessed with her.
How did you connect to the siblings in this book?
I loved it. It's definitely one of the reasons why I think I connected to the book. I find the sibling relationship super interesting, especially that time period. You know, like again, the idea that all of them, well, obviously, we don't really get inside all three of them at the same depth, but they all are grappling with what they think that they are responsible for in terms of like pleasing and helping their family and each other, and then the future, right? They're thinking about marriage and children and work and like whatever. And so I thought it was really quite beautiful to get to understand how each of us sort of, I resonated in that, like, I think that I see myself as a certain role within my family, so I was able to like really connect to the way that these characters felt about themselves. So I love sibling stories and family stories. I love triangles. I love pining and longing and sexual repression.
When it comes to like defining a family, for example, I think this book kind of shows you that you may not always, you find family in people you may not always expect. Like, I want to know a bit more about what's your definition of a family when it comes to this book.
Yeah, that was something I thought about a lot, especially writing the last third of the novel, because I think especially in history, right, where our lens on the past gets really compressed through these very like official archival documents like marriage certificates, death certificates, birth certificates. It sort of compresses the past into this very boxed in, like, flat view, and that's really far from the truth of people's experience in the past. Like, families were so diverse, they were, you know, multifaceted, and they were composed of many different ways. I mean, I love Bridgerton, but that I think is a very like template example of what we think of as a family, and it doesn't necessarily represent what people in the past experienced in terms of what they thought of as family. So I was really interested in kind of showing what families can be forged and how they can be made, and you know, what it takes to be one.
Yeah, so again, family's a big part, siblings are a big part, and I know you mentioned this before, but I want to go back to that unexpected magic of this book, literally, you know, the Celtic magic. I mean, tell us about that. I go a bit more into depth about where that came from. There's a particular tale in this book that comes over and over and over again. So what's the context of it?
Yeah, so the story you're referring to is the legend of the Selkie, which is a Scots-Irish myth, but it shows up kind of all around the North Atlantic and through the polar regions as well. And that is a story that I encountered when I was very young. And there's many different versions that exist in the world, but I've always been really curious about how folklore not only brings through parts of history that are maybe lost in the recorded version, so it's a way of bringing oral history forward, but also folklore is a way to kind of explain the more intangible elements of history we've experienced. So whether that's through emotion or values or kind of cultural themes that were on people's mind at the time. And with the Selkie myth in particular, many of the versions that exist are told from a very specific perspective. And so I was excited for the opportunity to use fantasy and mythology to really question the idea of like, who is telling the story and who gets to be the hero, who is the protagonist of this tale. And throughout the novel, the legend gets retold 3 different times, and each time the viewpoint and the answer of who is the protagonist shifts slightly.
And you know, your ideas from using the magic to family and all the siblings, and it kind of, I mean, you wrote this in the Fraser Valley, actually, in Abbotsford, eh? Partly, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so I want to ask you a little bit about just, you know, we're here in the community. Was there any way that writing here, out here, did it inspire you? Did it create any influence in the way you were? I know much of the book is also set in Ontario, but all in the East Coast, but was there any element from out here that sat with you?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my life was very much kind of in motion at the time. Like, over the 6 years I was writing this book and working on it. And walking in the Fraser Valley with my dog was one of the most like constant elements of my creative process. So yeah, many scenes in this book were drafted in my head while like walking in Wilburn Creek Park and through Aldergrove and you know, hiking trails around the Fraser Valley. So very much the landscape here and the natural world became kind of an intrinsic part of my process and my thinking time.
What kind of dog?
She's a husky Malinois.
There you go. Yeah, I can appreciate the brainstorm walks in our region. We have lots of places to do that. As well, just BC overall. What was there is a bit of BC in the book, but what's your connection to our province?
Well, I've lived here for almost 15 years now. And I came, when I was living in Ontario, growing up there, I came out to British Columbia for a couple of weeks when I was 17, and I just absolutely fell in love with this province. And I went back home at the time, kind of promising myself that I was going to come back here one way or another. And it did eventually happen. I took a bit of a detour to Montreal for a number of years, which were really fun. Yeah, when I finally landed here in BC, I felt like, oh, this is home. This is where I intend to stay.
I mean, it's a good place to be.
No complaints.
I want to go more into a bit of the process of writing, especially a work like this. I mean, I imagine it's very hard work. You know, part of it is probably the research, figuring out where to start. Sometimes as a journalist, like you're working on a story and you're just like, I don't know how to move forward from here. Like you get stuck. I'm sure everybody in your job and your careers, whatever you do, you can relate to those points where you're like, oh my goodness, I don't know what to do now. I'm curious, as a writer, as the author of this book, was there a point where you're just like, nah, I gotta throw in the towel, I can't do this anymore? Did you have that moment?
At least once a week for 6 months. It sounds like I'm exaggerating, but genuinely, at least once a week, that would float through my head and be like, what am I doing? This isn't gonna work. But yeah, there were plenty of dead ends, and I distinctly remember I wrote like 30,000 words and another kind of alternate draft that just stalled out, and I had to cut it.
30,000?
That was a tough day.
That was a couple months worth.
Yeah, just gone. Yeah, it was. So yeah, persistence. Honestly, yeah, that was, I think, the real engine behind all of this.
What keeps you going after you write 30,000 words and realize it's not part of the book?
I put in my headphones and I went for a walk, and then I think I came home and watched ice cream and some reality TV, and then woke up the next morning and was like, all right, back to work.
Yeah. Is there anything else that really helped you kind of create the full, packages itself? I mean, the support that you have with you.
Oh, absolutely. So I wrote most of this book while I was doing my master's in creative writing at UBC. So I had this amazing writing community around me and a thesis advisor who all gave me really good, strong critical feedback on the early drafts. So that was really helpful to keep me accountable, first of all, and also just inspired, right? Because I was surrounded by so many incredible writers. Yeah.
It's nice to have a good network around you, a support group to help you keep going. Tegan, I'm curious, you've written as well, so as a writer, what do you think is the toughest part of working on a book? Does it start from the idea, the publishing? Like, where do you think is the main part that can be challenging?
I don't know, like I think I'm in a different place than Logan specifically, because Logan also runs a company, a gaming company, and is a grown-up with a job. Maybe for me, like the hardest part, and we've talked a little bit about this, was that when Sarah and I sat down to write our memoir, that was my job until it was done. And so I felt a lot of pressure, like to get up every single day and make a pot of coffee and sit there and write for 8 hours. And as someone who didn't go to school for writing and didn't have a community of writers, let's just say I wrote lots of tens of thousands of words. Our editor, the first draft, was like, you're writing your, what was the word, what would she call it? Your Odyssey. And I was just like, yeah, we just wrote and wrote and wrote, and they would cut so much, and then we'd send back the next draft, and it would be longer than the first one we had sent. And, so I think, like, for me, I'm just like very verbose and have a lot of ideas, and I'm hyper-focused, so when I sit down, sometimes I won't stand up for like 8 hours.
Yes.
So just like learning balance and learning control, learning how to stop myself, learning that after about 4 hours, nothing good's coming out, and to stop, to build distractions, to build a bigger life, to experience life. Like I'm writing right now, and I feel much more vulnerable now because I have to do it in a shorter period of time, and share it more with, I started to build a community and do those things. But yeah, it's extremely hard, but it's not that much different than making music, to be honest, because I write alone. Sarah and I do not share or collaborate, so it's like a pretty solitary experience regardless. So there's actually quite a bit of similarity to experiences.
And Logan, when we had met a couple of weeks ago, you had told me that the editing process, your editor was very critical part of this as well. Can you share with the audience, I mean, what was that like? Who were you working with?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to work with the incredible Anne Collins at University of Canada. And she was just, she's ruined me for any other editor, honestly, before, because she was so good. And from our very first conversation, I got the sense that she just understood my manuscript on a level that I didn't. And so she was seeing, yeah, it was amazing. And so she could see things in it, and she could pull things together and point out problems that I had totally missed, but she was absolutely right. And so, yeah, we edited the book for about 2 years before it came to print.
What, can I ask? May I?
Yeah, you.
Can I ask a
Yes.
question? Did you, okay, would you have would you talk first and then get inline notes in the document?
Oh, yeah.
And then when you saw the inline notes, were you overwhelmed by it?
It was very overwhelming.
Yeah.
At first, because she gave me the option of digital or hard copy notes, so I said, sure, I'll take hard copy, because that's how she liked to work. So I got in the mail this printed out 400-page manuscript of every page.
Why would you do that?
It felt good to watch the pages move.
Okay.
And I just worked better. But yeah.
Okay, one more follow-up question. So you've got the physical copy, and do you make the changes in the computer though?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then it comes back weeks later.
Yeah.
With more things.
Yeah.
Did you, one more follow-up.
That's fine.
I'm doing research, y'all.
It's part of the process.
It's part of the process.
We're doing it together. Yeah.
Did you ever receive feedback in a really negative way? Did you ever, was there anything you pushed back on that you were like, no, you're wrong? But you said you understood the manuscript and better than anyone, but was there something you knew and trusted yourself on that stayed?
There were, yeah. And I had, because I'd been writing this book in community, at UBC, there were specific parts of the manuscript when I had workshopped it in that community that other people had said, oh, you should change this, you should so, and that was the point where I was like, no, this is my hard line, this isn't changing. One of the most divisive things was the pronoun shift throughout the book. So I got a lot of advice from other writers and from other editors and mentors saying, you gotta take that out. It'll never get published if you leave that in. And
why?
That was why. I think because it just wasn't done in publishing. It was something new, and people were unsure that it would sell.
Again,
You're
making
that'd be too confusing.
Truly, yeah. But during my earliest conversations with Anne, it was really clear to me that never came up. She was like, oh, this is great, I love it, yeah, don't change it. And I was like, okay. She seems to really be aligned with what my vision for the book is, so that helped me to trust her in all the other places where she was like, maybe we don't. And I was like, yeah, maybe we don't.
So after 2 years of all that persistence,
That's cool.
was there a section of this book that you were really proud of, that was different, unique, and you look back on and you were like, yep, that was the moment, that was the time, that was the day, I figured it out? I don't know.
Probably the part that I'm most proud of is the very last part of part 2. There's a scene where there's kind of 2 different settings and it all merges, and that, from a technical standpoint, that was very difficult to write. And I remember pitching that idea to my thesis advisor before I had written it. I came into her office and I was like, this is what I want to do. And the look on her face was so priceless, because she was like, okay, maybe write it and show me, I guess, but it just seemed so outlandish. So by the time, 15 drafts later, when I finally kind of got it into a shape where I was like, yes, it works, that was incredibly satisfying.
Are there any other moments that you can think of that were very rewarding through this process? Things that maybe changed your perception on something, that challenged you? What stands out?
The standalone scene between part 1 and 2 was actually the last scene that I wrote in the whole book. And I resisted writing it for a really long time because I was just so stuck. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to put in this. I know something needs to go here. And my editor kept being like, we need something here, you can't skip over it. And I was tearing my hair out over it. And so I finally just, poured a cup of coffee, sat down, forced myself to write it. And I was really dissatisfied with it initially, but we were getting up close to deadline, it just had to be done. And then once the whole book was finished and I was able to hold it in my hands, I was like, oh, she was right. Like this is the scene that needed to be here. I'm really glad I trusted her, and I buckled down and got it done.
And then the moment came where, you see the final copy, you hold it in your hands. What goes on in your heart at that moment?
It was so surreal. It was just, because working on a book like this, I worked on it alone in various desks and walking in the Fraser Valley, and then I'd worked on it in these like small communities, and then just me and my editor. So it had been in this very sort of sheltered place, and then suddenly we got to publication date. It was like reaching a waterfall, and suddenly this book, it isn't really mine anymore. It belongs to readers everywhere, and it belongs to the libraries, and it's out there in the world, having its own independent adventure.
And people can perceive it in all different kinds of ways as well. Tegan, is there anything else that stood out to you when you were processing this book and going through the different themes and parts of it?
I was actually saying when we were all just sitting and chatting before this that one of the things that I've been really struck by is how many people have reached out to me that don't usually read. Like my partner, for example, does not read historical fiction. She mostly just reads books on Japanese minimalism and running. And she's obsessed. Like she's enjoyed the book so much, and I've heard from so many people, and I think that for me, like I enjoyed the book so much. I'm the person that definitely, when you come to my house and tell me that you don't read, you will leave my house with a couple books. Like I will find a book that you will enjoy reading, and I'm just really excited about this book because I think that this platform, this experience, this like opportunity is going to get a lot more people to read this book, and I think it should be read. I think it should also be made into a limited series or.
Okay, I want to ask you about that, Logan. Do you have any hopes for that? Are there any other ways or transformations with this book? What would you like to see?
I mean, I would love that. I feel like that's somewhat out of my hands, but I would love to see it as a limited series and come to the screen.
And when we're talking about reading, one thing that's been happening more and more that I'm seeing is people are creating like playlists for books. You listen to the music. Sometimes you have a projector screen and you put yourself in the actual scene. On YouTube.
What?
Yes, the whole thing. It's the whole thing. It's called immersive reading. So,
I've been on social media for like a year. This is how we're doing.
You can put up a projector. For example, you can pretend you're in Southern Ontario or the prairies or something, and then you put the playlist on as well, so you're really immersed in this whole.
And then you read.
And then you read.
What the?
Has anybody done that? No? Okay. Well, there's probably one person at the back. I want to ask you about the playlist, though. So you created.
Does it count if you're like in Cabo having a margarita in the middle of the afternoon reading a beach read? Would that be immersive?
I mean, that's very immersive. Sure. We'll count that. Something for you all to try next time. Tell us about the playlist.
Sure, yeah. So music was a big part of my creative process writing this book. I'm someone who I create playlists based on different pieces that I'm working on, different stories and so on, because they're a very helpful way to kind of drop right back into the world no matter where I'm writing from. And so writing this novel, I created like hundreds of hours in playlists of various music. And so when the book was released, I went back through and I kind of curated, I think there's 22 songs total, but I just kind of...
Wait, this is an existing playlist?
This is an existing playlist.
Why have you been withholding that? That sounds amazing.
It's publicly available.
Is it?
Yeah.
This has been so helpful. What a cool idea.
How many of you think you're going to do that? You're going to put the playlist on? Yeah? Yeah.
I won't want you, it's not immersive.
Okay, but close.
It's, maybe, it's
Wait, can I ask a question about that? Like, were the songs, they helped you get into the world, but were they songs that you sort of attached to each character? Like, would they be like songs that you could imagine those characters enjoying? Like, say more.
To some degree, they're more like songs that I attach in my head to different scenes and different parts of the book. So I think it's a playlist that really only makes sense
To you?
to me.
Okay.
But I'm happy to share it with the world. It's not,
I'm gonna
it's
make
not
a
quite the
playlist.
immersive thing.
Okay.
I'm gonna make a playlist for the characters,
Thank you.
and then I'll send it over to you.
Tegan's will be infinitely better.
No, they're gonna complement each other. They're gonna work well together, they're gonna be a good team.
Yeah. So, not immersive, but something else for you to consider or hear while you're reading the novel here. One other part that I wanted to ask you was that going back to teaching at UBC, your colleague is actually a finalist with Canada Reads as well. So that's Billy Falkmore who's doing this, and he wrote a minor chorus. So I'm curious, what is that dynamic like? Like, have you guys talked about this? Has there been any collaboration about thinking about Canada Reads together? I don't know. What's that been like?
I mean, Billy Ray is a wonderful professor and a wonderful guy. And he was teaching at UBC when I was a grad student there. So now that I am teaching there, he's very much my senior colleague. So we've seen each other at some staff meetings and a few different events. But I don't know, we haven't had any strategy talks.
Okay. Well, I'm curious if the both
That made me so nervous, you explaining all of that. So, no, it's like, I've been so immersed in my own world thinking about the other champions and our dynamic, but I hadn't considered that some of you, as authors, you interface with one another. That's intense.
I'm curious if both of you had any time to discuss strategy going forward for Canada Reads. What are you, I mean, I don't know if you have to reveal your cards, but what are you working on? What are you thinking about? Have you had any discussions?
We have.
What are you thinking of? It's a debate, so how are you preparing? How are you hoping to get that all together?
I got a prescription to beta blockers. That was the first thing I did. Yeah, that was number one.
Yeah.
I'll say this, it was really wonderful to go to Toronto and meet all the other people like me doing the championing, and everybody was so nice. I just kept thinking, my God, this is gonna be so hard. How on earth could I go after these people? And then I hadn't read all the books yet. Then I came home and read all the books. And I was like, this is gonna be really hard. These are all great books. When we spoke recently at the end of the call, I said, it is already a win to be here. I was just trying to set Logan up for me to not make it through the first day. I was like, as long as I make it to the second day, I beat Sarah, and that feels really important. But yeah, I don't know. It's it's hard because I just love reading, and I just want people to read, and I hate that people don't prioritize it because it's such a gift to be able to read. It just can take you anywhere, and libraries are the plane. They're the portal to go to that place, and so it's hard for me to imagine coming up with any bad or negative things because I just I think there's a book for everybody. I just think this book is for the most amount of people. I think it's just, it's so beautiful and it's so relatable and it's so well written that it's not dense. And so my strategy, I think, is probably going to just to continue to hit home that this is a classic, and I just feel like it's a very good book. I'm almost hesitant to be like it's a Canadian book because I feel like Canadians are prejudiced against Canadian things sometimes. My partner told me just to tell them it's heated rivalry with Elle-Máijá.
Okay.
Yeah. It's there's timing, there's secrecy, and I was like, yeah, okay. I don't know, my strategy really going forward is just to go and do my very best to get as many people to read this book as possible, but it's going to be really hard. Everybody seems just so nice, and the books are all great.
She's bringing the fire.
Yeah. According to the CBC Books team, when you get there, the gloves come off.
Yeah, it's a whole thing.
Yeah.
And you can watch it, by the way, so you can watch it online as well. I'm just holding the book, and I want to just, of course, if you read it, you will know more of the meaning of the title, but we maybe talk a little bit about just what led you to name it this, The Cure for Drowning, and just even the artwork and what went behind creating this book, all the blues.
Yeah, so the beautiful artwork, the cover design is by Jennifer Griffiths, who's illustrated quite a few book covers for publishers. It's incredible. I had absolutely nothing to do with it, so I can't take any credit for this gorgeous cover. And The Cure for Drowning, so the manuscript had a different name for quite a while when it went through a few working titles. But yeah, The Cure for Drowning just kind of clicked into place because I think throughout the book there's many different themes that can connect to that phrase. But in my mind, you know, we as people can drown metaphorically in many things, whether that's grief or isolation or feeling hopeless about the future. And the cure for that is our relationship with other people and the bonds that we make.
That's beautiful. And lastly, I want to ask you, we're going to get to audience questions soon, but I just want to ask you, reflecting on our conversation today, reflecting on the people who are going to hold your book, read your book, what is your hope that readers really take away from The Cure for Drowning?
I hope that this book will give people both a window, or either, a window into a past and into experiences that are very different from their own, in order for them to experience and have empathy for someone or for a time that they see as other. Or I hope that they read the book and see parts of themselves reflected in it and see themselves as not only part of Canadian history, but as part of a long and vibrant legacy that stretches back and also continues into the future.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. I want to get into audience questions. Kira, do we have some? Okay, awesome. We do. Okay, I'm so excited. Okay, here we go. Okay, so we're going back to the question of a limited series. Okay, so if you could, here we go. So who would play the characters in a limited series? So they're asking about Kit, Rebecca, and Landon. Who would you want to play them?
Great
Whoa, good question.
This is the part where I have to admit I'm face blind, and so I can't think, I can never attach people's names to actors. I think truly my hope would be that if this became a limited series, that it would be an opportunity for some new actors to find their way to the screen. I would love to see like a new, currently unknown trans-mask actor like Kit.
Breakout star.
Breakout star, yeah.
Tegan, do you have any thoughts on?
No, I think that's a great idea,
That's a great
actually.
idea.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay,
Because these characters are really young, so.
Here we have another question. So, okay, yeah, I was going to ask you this before actually. How much research did you have to do to set it during World War II?
So much. Yeah, I think as with a lot of projects like this, I ended up doing tons and tons of research, but what actually ended up in the book is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. So a lot of the historical research I did came in at a later stage in drafting, like it was kind of closer to like year 4 of the 6 years. And so I did it while I was in lockdown. So I spent, it was a good motivator because there was nowhere else to go and nothing else to do.
I guess I'll finish this book.
So yeah, I spent a lot of time on digital archives, and I owe a real debt to the hobby model aircraft community because they were the people who knew the most about Lancasters and about all the details of World War II aircraft. So yeah, the short answer is a lot.
Yeah, I remember reading it. I'm like, how did they know that all these codes were happening during this time? And you know, it's a lot of research, I imagine. So that's interesting. Next question is, for anyone who hasn't read the book and wants to picture what they might read, what TV show or movies would you relate your book to?
Yeah, okay. Heated rivalry, if there was. I was saying to people, it's kind of got like elements of Legends of the Fall, Portrait of a Lady on Fire meets that Love Lies Bleeding, Kristen Stewart, kind of mystical vibe. Do you know what I mean? Like if you kind of took all of that and put it in a Vitamix.
with a little bit of Secret of Ronan-ish thrown in there.
Oh, yeah.
A little bit of this, a little bit of that.
Mm-hmm.
You make something out of it. Okay, so that was a question for both, so okay, that works. Okay, here's an interesting question. What question do you wish people would ask about your book?
I actually get this question more often.
Oh.
So I always hope that people will ask about Patroclus because he's low-key one of my favorite cat, the kitten in part one. Because he's in part one and then he just kind of disappears.
Yeah, what happened to him?
I wrote the rest of his story. So he goes to Montreal with Rebecca, and then when she leaves to join the Wrens, he stays with her cousin Sabine, and Sabine kind of adopts him. And then after the war, Sabine marries a young man from an Italian family in Montreal, and the two of them move into an apartment above the family deli, and Patroclus becomes a deli cat. And he lives till 19 and is a yeah, so he turns out okay.
He has a whole journey.
He has a whole, that's like a whole mini-series on its own. It's just
A second limited series.
Yes. And we're back.
Deli cat in Montreal.
Yeah. Next question is for both. So the question is, there's two questions. Oh, here's the first one. What are you reading right now?
I am reading, I think it's called Gods of New York. It's about 4 years in the 80s in New York City when everything changed in New York City. Like when Manhattan specifically was like basically at its worst, and it kind of had a boiling over point where it was like, we need to clean up the city. I don't know. I've lost a lot of you, but it was, I don't know, I'm really into it.
What about you, Logan?
So I spent the last few months as a jury member for the Jim Deaver Prize for writing wicked books, which means I've had a lot of books I've had to read secretly for work. But I've been cheating on that by reading Gideon the Ninth again.
Oh, wow.
So I've been secretly reading Gideon the Ninth again. I really enjoy it.
So good.
It's such a good book.
Yeah.
I love it.
What book would you say has moved you or affected you most?
Like ever?
Ever.
Or just recently?
I'm gonna go, I don't know who asked this, but ever? Sure? Ever? Is there one?
There's definitely, but give me
Just narrow it down, just pick one. I'll jump in. I've always say like Fall on Your Knees, Emery McDonald. Just because it was the first book I ever read with a queer character, queer storyline, and I read it in 10th grade. So it felt like I really had never seen myself represented. It's like weird to relate because it's like a weird storyline for like someone in 10th grade. But I was like, take any gay sex, whatever, I'll just take it. You know, like it just felt very like it was just weird to like know who I wasn't out yet. So like to see some option, like it really impacted me.
Logan, were you able to narrow it down?
I did, yes. On that like theme, Emma Donohue's two earliest novels, Stir Fry and HUD, were very like formative for me. I read them when I was an undergrad, and again, yeah, it just kind of like opened up this whole new world of books to me. Of like, oh, you can write like that, and you can write about this stuff. Well, okay, and now here we are.
Here you are. What a moment to come back and to do this. Again, your debut novel, so that's incredible. Congratulations. And those are all the questions I had here. So, thank you so much for being here to talk about this. And Tegan, you're gonna bring the energy and debate it out.
I'm really excited.
Yeah.
It's an easy book to defend. It's that good, so I feel really excited. I hope everybody here has read it, but I'm like, yeah, I'm really looking forward to doing this. I feel very like bonded to the book now. It feels like my book. If Logan goes missing.
You can be gone.
Okay, great.
Any other last remarks?
Just thank you so much. This has been an absolute whirlwind and honestly a dream come true. And thank you for all the really lovely things you've said about my book on radio. I really appreciate
It's so good. It's so good. It's such a delight. It's well deserved. I cannot believe you worked on it for 6 years. The focus and all the other things you do. I don't think people understand how hard it is to write a book and how much like it feels sometimes just like a labor of love, and it feels that way for me. I can't even imagine how it felt to do that during lockdown, and I'll never forget the like physical copy notes. That's absolutely haunting.
Yeah, a lot of words that didn't go use.
Yeah, it's really amazing though. You should be very proud of yourself.
For those of you who have not read the book and you want to purchase the book, the Owl and Cat Bookkery is right behind us here. They are ready to meet you and say hello. You can go there to purchase also a selection of Tegan's books, or there are other Canada Reads finalists as well. Logan and Tegan will be sticking around just to chat, sign some books, do what you need. So they'll be here for another, I believe, half an hour here. And I also want to say that, again, going back to CBC having a bureau here in Abbotsford, again, Kira and I are here to cover the issues that matter the most to our community. I think they already talked to you about joining our WhatsApp group. You can do that every day. Each one of us is going to be sending you a piece of news in our community that's happening. So, be there. We're here for you to cover what matters here, and we just want to show that as well. And I also want to thank Fraser Valley Regional Library and, of course, Clearbrook, this library here. I was thinking, used to come here as a kid on field trips and things, and now we're back. It's really cool. So thank you so much to everyone for taking the time. And there will actually be some prizes, I believe, today. There's going to be an event survey as well. So if you want to take some time to fill that out, it helps us figure out what more we can be doing with these events. And then we're also going to be doing, Courtney, I believe it's a raffle, correct, for some prizes here as well. So that's going to be happening to get reading these Canada Reads books as well. So thank you for being here.